In the early stages of this pandemic, one of the things we did discuss on a couple of occasions was making masks here and stop relying on China for everything. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I went out and did some researching and I came up with this article. The US actually had an opportunity to make these masks and they turned it down. They turned it down. This could have been millions of jobs. It could have produced masks to take care of the entire medical system in this country. But the high IQ people at the top said no. Now, wouldn't this be a perfect time for something like this, being that so many people are out of work? So this came out in the Washington Post, May 9th, 2020. In the early days of the pandemic, the US government turned down an offer to manufacture millions of N95 masks in America. It was January 22nd, a day after the first case of COVID-19 was detected in the United States, and orders were pouring into Michael Bowen's company outside Fort Worth. Some as far as Hong Kong. They were ordering from him. Bowen's medical supply company, prestigious Ameritech, could ramp up production to make an additional 1.7 million N95 masks a week. He viewed the shrinking domestic production of medical masks as a national security issue, though, and he wanted to give the federal government first dibs. We still have 4 new N95 manufacturing lines, Bowen wrote that day in an email to top administrators of the Department of Health and Human Services. Reactivating these machines would be very difficult and very expensive, but could be achieved in a dire situation. But first communications over several days with senior agency officials, including Robert Kadlec, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Emergency Response, left Bowen in the clear impression that there was little immediate interest in his offer. I don't believe we as a government are anywhere near answering those questions for you yet. Laura Wolf, director of the agency's Division of Critical Infrastructure Protection, responded that same day. Bowen persisted. We are the last major domestic mask company, he wrote on January 23rd. My phones are ringing now, so I don't need government business. I'm just letting you know that I can help you preserve our infrastructure if things are ever get really bad. I'm a patriot first. Okay, so we know we know who Michael Bowen ain't. Businessman second. In the end, the government did not make Bowen up on his offer. So they didn't take him up on this offer, okay? They didn't take him up. They pretty much turned him down instantly for mass producing these N95 masks. And he said he could do 1.7 million masks per week. I would think that would be helpful. Even today, production lines that could be making more than 7 million masks a month still dormant. Bowen's overture was described briefly in an 89-page whistleblower complaint filed this week by Rick Bright, former director of Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, Bright alleges he was retaliated against by Cadlick and other officials, including being reassigned to a lesser post because he tried to prioritize science and and safety over political. Okay, so what he's saying is he tried to do the right thing. And when he did, try to prioritize everything based on the immediate situation going on in America, they retaliated on him. So, what questions should we be asking at this point? Do they really want this situation to get better? Because when you read something like this, it makes you believe maybe they want this all to fall apart. You don't want N95 masks being mass produced. You didn't want someone to prioritize things in the best interest of the American people. You retaliated on him. And wow, emails show Bright pressed Cadlick and other agency leaders on the issue of mass shortages and Bowen's proposal specifically, to no avail. On January 26, Bright wrote to a deputy that Bowen's warning seems to be falling on deaf ears. That day, Bowen sent Bright a more direct warning. U.S. mass supplies is at imminent risk, he wrote. Rick, I think we're in deep shit. He wrote a day later. The story of Bowen's offer illustrates a missed opportunity in the early days of the pandemic, one laid out in Bright's whistleblower complaint, interviews with Bowen, and emails provided by both men. Within weeks, a shortage of masks was endangering healthcare workers in hard-hitting areas across the country. And the Trump administration was scrambling to buy more masks, sometimes placing bulk orders with third-party distributors for many times the standard price. President Trump came under pressure to use extraordinary government powers to enforce the private industry to ramp up production. But you had somebody that was ready to go. Wow. Woo, they really know how to complicate things. In a statement, White House economic advisor and coronavirus task force member Peter Navarro said the company was just extremely difficult to work and communicate with. This was a sharp contrast to groups like the National Council of Textile Organization and the companies like Honeywell and Parkdale Mills, which have developed America's very rapidly built up cost-effective domestic mass capacity, measuring in the hundreds of millions. Carol Danko of HHS spokeswoman declined to comment on the offer by Bowen and other allegations raised in the whistleblower complaint. Wolf also declined to comment on the whistleblower complaint. A senior U.S. official with knowledge of the offer said Bowen, 62, has a legitimate beef. But the reality is HHS didn't have the money to do it at that time. Okay, let's say you didn't. Let's say you didn't. But when you finally did get the funding, did you contact this man for masks? When he said he could do 1.7 million masks per week? Another HHS official, also speaking on the condition of being anonymous, There is a process for putting out contracts. It wasn't as fast as anyone wanted to be. 2 decades ago, a low sling factory in Texas was part of a supply conglomerate that produced almost 9 in 10 medical and surgical masks used in the United States. Bowen was a new product specialist at the plant back then, and he watched as the industry consolidations and outsourcing shift control of the plant from Technol Medical Products to Kimberly Clark, and then shuttered altogether. In less than a decade, almost 90% of all US mask production had moved out of the country, according to government reports at the time. Wow. Wow. I don't see how you can let China make everything. Do you know how easy it would be to cut this country off? You know, that was a stupid move. I don't know who came up with that, but that was stupid. Bowen and Dan Reese, a former executive at Technol, went into business together in 2005 and eventually bought the plant, believing a market remained for a dedicated domestic manufacturer of protective gear. In wake of the terrorist attack of 9/11 in 2001, Congress appropriated $6 billion to buy antidotes to bioweapons and the medical supplies the country would need in public health disasters. An obscured new government organization called the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authorities was among the agency's purchasing material for what would become a strategic national stockpile. The government would pay a premium to have masks manufactured domestically, but his company would keep its extra factory lines in working order, meaning production could be ramped up in an emergency. Bowen said he soon concluded that I think he came to the realization that he was not going to get this business from the government. That's pretty much what they're saying. Still, Bowen moved down the supply chain, appealing directly to hospitals to buy his domestic made mask. His sales pitch often ended with a plea to call. So they were telling him to call, what's that place I was saying? The Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. So every time he tried to sell, even directly to companies, they told him to call them. Mm-mm-mm. The Office of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, one, had a table showing that in the event of a pandemic, the country would need 5.3 billion N95 respirator masks, 50 times more than the number in the stockpile. The presentation concluded industrial surge capacity of respirator protection device will not be able to meet need, and supplies will be short during a pandemic. Bowen felt like his voice was in the wilderness. The world just looked at me as mask salesman who was saying the sky was falling, he said. And they would say, your competitors aren't saying that in China. Wow. After Trump's election, Bowen hoped the new president, America's first mentality, might trickle down to operations like his. He wrote a letter to Trump and addressed it to the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. 90% of the United States protective mask supply is currently foreign made, it began. I didn't think Trump would read it, but I thought someone would take note, Bowen said. In Trump's first year, however, Bowen grew newly delusioned. During the week when the White House touted its Buy America, Hire American initiative, Bowen lost a military contract worth up to $1 million to a supplier that would make many of the masks in Mexico, he said. So, it just boils down to this. All this hire American, buy American is a bunch of bull. At the end of the day, they're looking for a cheap supplier in a foreign land. They're not looking for anything to be made on American soil. That's why you should never take seriously all of these talks, and when they come out talking about we need to bring manufacturing back to America, they're not bringing those companies back here, y'all. They talk a good game, but at the end of the day, they pay Chinese people $3 an hour to make those same masks. They're not going to bring it over here to American soil and pay you quadruple that amount or even more. They're not going to do it. It's all about money. That's why they took the production to Mexico for these N95 masks, because at the end of the day, it's about money. They are not concerned about manufacturing on American soil. And, and I've done videos on this too. I would hear people even saying as well, we need to bring these jobs back to America. They're never bringing these jobs back to America, even during a pandemic. They're not bringing these jobs back to America. And he's not the only one. I did another story on a black man, a black-owned company. They make these same masks. And he had a problem in the same manner as Michael Bowen in this story. Nobody would buy from him. And he had millions of masks in a warehouse sitting there, and nobody in the government would buy them. So ask yourself, why is there a shortage of PPE in the country, and you got companies right here on American soil that have stockpiles of these masks, and this government is ignoring them? So how bad do they want to remedy this situation? Sounds to me like they don't want to fix it. They don't want to do nothing about it. See, what these folks need to do, sell to the public. Because people out here will buy it if the government won't. Sell to the public. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.